Hello, I'm Jonathan from Open Fifth, and what's on our mind this week is bots, AI bots in particular, and delighted to be joined with our head of IT, Steven Raith.
Hello.
So, yes, it's something that's very much on our mind at the minute. Well, our mind, but I think everyone's mind, because everyone is talking about AI at the minute. So how do you sort of perceive that it's affecting and impacting your day-to-day life at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it's causing increased load in our servers, which is causing performance increases for performance issues, sorry, even for our clients. And it's causing me some sleepless nights. But at least on Facebook Mobile, I can get inappropriate questions suggested about the articles that I'm reading. So that's nice. Other than just being sarcastic about it, I mean, there's a use for this stuff. So, like for example, if you're trying to find an answer to a genuinely obscure question, it's quite good at scraping the entirety of
Mm.
Stack Exchange, or it has scraped the entirety of Stack Exchange, and it can pull that information out. And it's broadly actually quite accurate for that, but you still need to trust but verify. So it's six of one, half a dozen of another as to whether I hate it or love it on any given day.
Yeah, that's right. I have similar sort of experiences with it. But in terms of the libraries that we work with, and I guess other libraries around, well, other websites around the world right now, what are we seeing as the impact of that?
Well, at the moment, basically, there's a significant proportion of the internet is being scraped by, I'll say dozens confidently, but probably hundreds of crawlers, which are designed specifically to collect data for these large language models, which are these things that make ChatGPT sound like a person. And this is basically currently the big thing in tech. So it's like
Mm.
dot-com boom, basically. Everyone's throwing money at it because they think they'll get money out of it. Now, this wasn't so much of an issue when it was the proper big techs like AWS, Google, and Anthropic doing it because they identify themselves. They generally not go overboard with the scraping, and if they did misbehave, you could say, "Oi, you, no, get off," and they would. They'd stop. Use a system called robots.txt, which is basically a
Mm.
gentleman's agreement to
Yeah.
agree that you shouldn't be hammering the site too much. Problem is that now there are what I'll call less professional firms who appear to have subcontracted out people to scrape the internet for them, and they are less well-mannered. They explicitly lie about who they are, so they pretend to be a regular web browser. They don't identify themselves as a bot, and they use far too much resources when they're scraping. We've seen regularly hundreds of connections per second from what's effectively the same resource group coming from hundreds of different network endpoints, and not just network endpoints, but the groups of network endpoints. So that makes them sort of functionally impossible to block using your standard programmatic methods of looking at the IP ranges they're coming from, because they have the same behavior coming from Brazil, from Romania, from South Africa, from Russia, from America, and it's not possible to, as I say, sort of look at patterns and find them because there is no pattern to define.
Mm.
So unless you're running a website that basically has huge resources, and I mean like unrealistic for the average web hoster, then basically that will just take any website down to its knees. There's no two ways about it. Um, so the problem is that if you've got a fairly basic website, which is just flashing up just a page of plain text, then you can serve hundreds of responses per second to that, no problem, all day. But the thing is that Koa isn't a simple website serving up plain text. It's got an entire
Yeah.
stack of software, which when you search for, say, Romeo and Juliet, it has to go through, interpret the URL, reconfigure that, reach down to the database, grab the actual results after doing a search across the database indexes, and then send that back up to Perl, reformulate that, and then present it on your page. And that takes, say, a fifth of a second. So if you've got hundreds of requests for that coming through, you start to see the problem.
Mm. Yeah. And I know it's well, I know because I know how much you and your team have been doing, but I know the infrastructure team at OpenFit have been working hard to resolve this. What sort of measures can we put in place to protect our libraries?
Well, there are basically two options for the domains that we have control of. So your openfith.nets, your coaptfs.co.uk's, your aspen.discovery.co.uk's, and so on. We can use Cloudflare because we own the domains and we can determine how they get interacted with within Cloudflare. That's a name most of you probably recognize because on the
Mm,
rare occasions they have a problem, everyone notices because they basically look after about half of the internet. So we can use that for them. We've got a pretty comprehensive list of rules which helps protect against it, and there are internal tools which do bot detection using, ironically, AI on the back end. It works pretty well. So we've got that covered from that perspective. But we do have organizations who don't have one of those domains. They have their own domain. So, for
quite a
example,
lot.
Steve, yeah, stephen.ac.uk or jonathan.org.uk, and we can't control
Mm,
those. We can't put them behind Cloudflare. For those, what we have been doing is a bit of a sort of brute force approach. We did notice that the user agents for a lot of these bots were completely random. So they were saying they're coming from Chrome 64 on Windows CE. Windows CE, in case you're wondering, is the Windows that used to run on phones. I don't mean Windows 8. I mean like 20 years ago run on phones.
mm,
So we had restrictions in place where basically if your browser was reporting as being more than about 2 years old, so older than say Chrome 120 or Firefox 110, then we just wouldn't give access. And that worked pretty well. But some of these scrapers have been started getting wise to that and are starting to report as being Chrome 129. So for those, there's a nice little tool called Anubis, which yes, it's named after the Egyptian god because it weighs the soul of your incoming HTTP connections. And it does that by forcing your browser to do a little bit of math. So your browser on your computer is running on a full fat processor. It's got big caches. It's got dedicated hardware dedicated to doing pure math. So if you tell it to do an encryption sum on a 20-digit string, it can do it like that, no problem. Your
yeah,
phone is not that far off, but it's done. It's a little bit
yeah,
longer. The AI bot scrapers have none of that. They are explicitly run on the lowest resources possible so they can get the most concurrent connections possible on the underlying hardware they're running. So if you ask it to do the same math, it takes it over a minute. And at that stage, you've gummed up the works and it stops them from being able to put more and more requests through.
right.
Secondarily, what Anubis does is when it sees these connections come through and they take ages to complete the actual challenge, it marks them with a cookie, and that cookie says, go away. And at that stage, they can no longer reconnect to the site. They'll try and touch Anubis, but Anubis will simply just send them off again with very minimal load on the actual server itself. So that's functionally how that works, which I know is the vocal equivalent of a wall of text, but it's basically asks you to do math. If you can't do it, you get told to sod off, is the long and short
Right.
of it.
Right. And I know Anubis is well, Anubis is going viral right now, not unsurprisingly, because everyone around the world is suffering from this problem like we are. But what sort of results are we seeing from the mitigations that we're putting in place?
Well, we're having a look at this, and one of the academic institutions we look after, we told Anubis to A, ignore any connections coming in from Janet and JISC networks.
Mm,
For obvious reasons, they are not going to be bots. They're going to be legitimate traffic. So it was only challenging requests from outside of Janet. So them on their
the
mobile
rest of the
phones,
world. Yeah.
yeah, me on my computer, you on your computer, etc. At that stage, 99.99% of those requests did not manage to complete the challenge. So
Incredible.
just to be more explicit, that's 19 out of 75,000 requests got through in 8 hours, which
Wow.
is a ludicrous number.
Hmm.
With respect to Cloudflare, we had one client who had a site that was with her domains, and it was getting 1 million hits a week, about 1,000 of which were genuine. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the problem. It is quite crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a massive problem for well for the whole planet at the moment. So yeah, so we've got these tools now, and I know you've been doing a lot of work fine tuning and experimenting with them. What's the plan with them in the coming months?
Well, at the moment, with Anubis, I'd say we're probably in a sort of a beta phase in so much as it's feature complete, but we're still catching some sort of edge cases. We've got a pretty good idea of what those edge cases are because we've been using Cloudflare in the background for quite a while now on Koa.
Mm.
With some of our clients who've got more of a technical interest and sort of do this as a hobby as well. And so they sort of don't have too much of a problem getting blocked by Cloudflare and sending us Array ID, which is their way of IDing a connection.
Yeah.
Um, so we're not expecting too many issues. But basically, at the moment, we're looking to add more people onto Cloudflare and where we can, for people that we control the domains of. People outside of our control will initially be adding Anubis to sites where we can see there's clearly getting absolutely hammered by
Mm.
bots, because that's the ones where they'll benefit the most from it. But ongoing, once we have got all those edge cases pinned down, we'll start using it as part of our default setup.
Yeah.
Longer term, we do have a relationship with developer of Anubis, and we do support them. So we might look at, for example, seeing if they're interested in integrating it slightly more into Koa. And we'd obviously discuss this with the community as a whole as well. So maybe if it's possible for them to package it down into a single Perl blob, we could have it as a configuration
Mm.
option, or more likely it'd be something like pluginizing it or something like that. But this is very much long term. We're talking over, sort of a couple of years. Um, but I'm pretty sure that, given you're the MD and founder of this company, I'm fairly certain you'd be happier with us just being able to do our jobs rather than chase this stuff around all the time.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, I'm, to be frank, I'm getting a bit sick of it now. So having
Mm.
these tools
Yeah, I
to
think we
help
all
us
are.
get past this, I'm quite looking forward to getting them rolled out further so we can just get on with doing our actual jobs, like building servers and working on projects and doing support tickets and doing
Yeah.
R&D in the background, that sort of thing. That'd be really nice.
Mm. Yeah. I think this is one of the challenges, isn't it, of well, working with technology, is that you're constantly having to jump to new challenges and new problems. But yeah, this is looking exciting and hopeful. And we've actually produced a blog post to go with this little video, and that's got some quite interesting background articles in it, which are worth a read because that gives you some context as to the way that it's affecting some of the other people. But
Yeah,
yes, we'll
because it's for clarity, it's not just library sites this is affecting.
no.
It's basically any site that has reasonably high reading age English long form content on it, which
Mm,
includes the metadata on web records, etc. But blogs, GitHub comments, a lot of those are being scraped as well. So
mm.
it's a large proportion of the internet is getting hit by this. This is why this Anubis program is so popular.
Yeah, and libraries obviously got a huge amount of metadata, which is very attractive. So yeah, so expect to hear more from us in the coming months as we carry on deploying these solutions in front of your servers. It's all part of the hosting service that we offer to our libraries. So we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you for your time, Stephen, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.